poor secretary rented a boyfriend for $500, but he turned out to be a millionaire, CEO, and changed her life. Before we begin, leave a comment letting us know which city you're watching from. Enjoy the story. Elena Rivera typed as if her words were bullets. In the back of the office, the voice she hated most echoed again. She still loves me, always chasing after me. Marcos's mocking laugh filled the room. Elena closed her eyes for a moment. She couldn't believe that after everything, he still had the nerve. Months after their breakup, he acted like he still had control over her. And now he was making sure to throw his taunts in front of all their coworkers. Something inside her snapped. Enough. Tomorrow was the company's annual party, where everyone was expected to bring a date. And she could already picture it. Marcos showing up with some fake girlfriend, looking at her with that smug face. Elena grabbed her phone immediately. She typed confidently into the search bar, corporate event companion, discreet, fast. She scrolled through a few profiles until one caught her attention. William, companion for social events. Few words. No over-the-top promises. Discreet. Elegant. Able to adapt to any setting. Fee $500. That's odd, she muttered, frowning. The photos looked like they were from a magazine. William in a dark suit, perfect posture, serious expression. No fake smile. He didn't look like a companion. He looked like a top-level executive. Something about the profile didn't match the price. But Elena didn't hesitate. Message sent. I need a date for my company's party tomorrow. Fee confirmed. Can we go over the details today? The reply came within 2 minutes. Confirmed. I'm available at 7 p.m. You pick the place. She chose a quiet cafe far from the office, and for the first time that day, she felt like she had taken control back. At exactly 6:58 p.m., Elena walked into the cafe. The place was simple but classy. She ordered a tea and sat by the window. Her stomach churned, not from fear but from boldness. She was about to meet a stranger and pretend he was her boyfriend, something she'd never do under normal circumstances. But Marcos had pushed her too far. At 7 on the dot, William walked in. Tall, polished, dark gray suit, white shirt, hair slicked back perfectly. His eyes scanned the room until they landed on her. Elena? He asked calmly. She stood up, steady. William? He nodded, and they shook hands. His grip was warm, confident, and his posture? Rock solid. Let's get straight to the point, Elena said, pulling out her phone with notes. The company party is tomorrow. I need you to pretend to be my boyfriend. That's all. No improvising. No surprises. Understood. We need to agree on our story. We met at a cafe, went out a few times, and now we're a couple. 2 months together. You're a consultant. Simple and believable. William just listened, observed. He didn't ask questions. Somehow that made her a bit uneasy. Have you done this before? She asked. A few times. For $500? He gave a small smile. Not everything is about money. That line stayed in her mind. But now wasn't the time to reflect. I'm Elena Rivera, marketing analyst. I work at Z Group headquarters. And you? William. Just William for now. You're very mysterious, she said, raising an eyebrow. And you're very direct, he replied naturally. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was interesting. For the next 40 minutes, they worked out all the details, where they met, how he won her over, how she fell for him. A simple, believable script. Just enough to shut Marcos up for one evening. At the end of their talk, Elena stood, grabbing her purse. The party is at the Hilton Hotel, Garden Hall, 8 p.m. I'll be there right on time. William stood as well. He pulled a small card from his pocket and handed it to her. If anything gets out of hand, say white wine 3 times. She raised an eyebrow. Is that some kind of password? It's a reminder that you won't need to worry about a thing. She tucked the card into her purse. As she walked out of the cafe, she took one last look at William. Something about him didn't add up. No man with that presence, that posture, that look, would work for $500 a night. She had hired someone to pretend to be her boyfriend. But this man, he didn't seem to have a price, and he was definitely hiding something. Elena woke up at 6 a.m. She hadn't slept well. Her conversation with William kept playing in her mind all night, especially that line, not everything is about money. What kind of companion says something like that? She took a shower, got ready, and headed to the office with a strange mix of anxiety and determination. Today was the day. Marcos would finally see that she had moved on. All morning, Elena tried to focus on work, but her thoughts kept drifting back to William. Something about him didn't quite add up. The perfect posture, the tailored suit, the way he spoke. It all seemed a little too natural for someone who claimed to do this just occasionally. At 11:30, her phone buzzed. Message from an unknown number. Good afternoon, Elena. I need to confirm a few details for tonight. Can we talk briefly over lunch, William? She replied, yes. Same cafe as yesterday, 12:30. Elena arrived at the cafe 5 minutes early. William was already there, sitting at the same table as the day before. This time he was wearing a navy blue shirt that brought out his dark eyes. He looked even more polished than yesterday. You're punctual, she said, sitting down. Always, he replied with a half smile. So what details do you need to go over? William leaned forward slightly. First, you mentioned your ex works at the same company. What's he like? What should I expect? Elena sighed. Marcos is complicated. Arrogant, manipulative. He likes being the center of attention. He'll probably try to provoke me or intimidate you. Got it. And your coworkers? Most of them are nice, but a few love gossip. Especially Sandra from HR and Paulo in finance. They'll look you over like you're from another planet. William nodded, as if mentally noting every word. And your company? Z Group. Is it a multinational? Elena frowned. Why do you want to know? So I don't ask silly questions during the conversation. I need to seem like I know your professional life. It made sense, but something in his tone bothered her. He seemed to know too much for just a hired date. Z Group is a holding company. We have several smaller businesses. I work in the marketing division at headquarters, Elena explained. But you don't need corporate details. Just show polite interest if someone talks about work. Understood. Now, what about our love story? Elena pulled out her phone and read her notes. We met 2 months ago at a cafe near Central Park. You helped me when I dropped my laptop. We started chatting, you asked me to dinner, and we've been getting to know each other since. Simple and effective. Exactly. You work as a freelance consultant. You travel a lot, which is why we don't see each other often. William smiled. And how did I win you over? Elena paused. She hadn't thought about that. You're thoughtful. You remember small things and you don't try to impress me with money. Interesting choice, he said with a glint in his eye. Why? Because it's true. She looked at him, confused. What do you mean? Nothing. Go on. Elena shook her head and returned to her notes. Oh, and one more thing. You prefer red wine. You hate soccer and you love classic films. Why classic films? Because Marcos hates them. He only watches action and silly comedies. William chuckled softly. You're building an anti-Marcos. Maybe. They spent another 20 minutes rehearsing small talk. William had an impressive knack for remembering details. Even stranger, he seemed to know a lot about investments, the financial market, and corporate strategy. When Elena mentioned that Z Group had recently gone through a restructuring, he asked questions that were a little too specific for someone outside the field. Did you study business? She asked, suspicious. A little bit of everything, he said vaguely. William, you're very mysterious. And you're very curious. I have the right to be. I'm paying you $500 to pretend to be my boyfriend. I need to trust you. William studied her for a long moment. Then he sighed. My full name is William Zhang. I'm 32 years old. I live in Manhattan. And yes, I've worked in finance before. What kind of work? Investments. And now you do this? Now and then, as a hobby. Elena raised an eyebrow. Hobby? What kind of person has pretending to be a boyfriend as a hobby? The kind who finds corporate life too boring. The answer didn't convince Elena, but she chose not to push. She was paying for his service, not his life story. As they stood to leave, William gently touched her arm. Elena, one last thing. What is it? If things get out of hand tonight, if your ex tries anything, if someone bothers you, if you feel uncomfortable, use the code. White wine 3 times? Exactly, and I'll take care of it. How? He smiled, but this time the smile felt different. There was something behind it she couldn't quite place. Trust me. Elena left the cafe even more intrigued. William Zhang wasn't just a regular escort. The posture, the knowledge, the quiet confidence. She had hired someone for a simple charade, but she was starting to suspect she had stepped into something much bigger than she expected. Elena arrived at the Hilton Hotel at 7:45 p.m., 15 minutes early. She wore a navy blue dress, elegant but not over the top. She wanted to make a good impression without looking like she was trying too hard. At exactly 8 p.m., William showed up. Elena nearly choked. He was wearing a flawless black suit, a white shirt, and a dark gray tie. The fabric looked high-end, tailored to fit him perfectly. His hair was neatly slicked back, and he walked with the kind of posture that gave off quiet confidence. He didn't look like someone she'd hired for a fake date. He looked like a high-level executive arriving to close a multi-million-dollar deal. "Good evening," he said as he walked over. "Good evening," she replied, still a little stunned. William offered his arm, and they walked toward the garden ballroom. Elena could feel the eyes of other people in the lobby. Some women watched William discreetly. Others didn't bother hiding it. "You're nervous," he whispered. "A little. Take a breath. You're going to do great." Something about his voice instantly calmed her. The ballroom was elegantly decorated. Soft lighting, round tables with white tablecloths, a small stage in the back with ambient music playing. Elena recognized most of her co-workers. About 80 people were mingling with wine glasses and hors d'oeuvres in hand. And there was Marcos. He was standing near the bar, chatting with 2 colleagues from the sales team, gesturing animatedly. He wore a dark blue suit Elena knew all too well, the same one he had worn to her birthday dinner 8 months ago. The moment he saw her, the smile on his face vanished. "He saw you," William murmured. "I know. Should we go to him or wait for him to come to us?" Elena took a deep breath. "Let's say hi to a few people first. Let him stew in curiosity." William smiled. "I like your strategy." They walked over to Sandra from HR, who was chatting near the welcome table with some coworkers. Elena knew Sandra would be the first to spread the news around the entire company. "Elena," Sandra said, beaming. "You look beautiful. And who's this prince?" "Sandra, this is William, my boyfriend." "William, this is Sandra from HR." William extended his hand gracefully. "Pleasure to meet you, Sandra. Elena speaks very highly of you." "How polite." Sandra practically melted. "How long have you two been together?" 2 months, Elena answered as planned. "And where did you meet?" "At a coffee shop near Central Park," William said with a smile. Elena dropped her laptop and I offered to help. We ended up talking for 3 hours. Sandra sighed, clearly charmed. "How sweet, Elena, you didn't tell us anything." "We wanted to keep things quiet at first," Elena explained. For the next few minutes, they made their way around the room, greeting coworkers and acquaintances. William was flawless, kind, engaged, but not overdoing it. He remembered names, asked polite questions about people's jobs, and showed an impressive knowledge of various topics. When Paulo from finance brought up investments, Elena tensed up, but William responded with ease, showing a deep understanding of the market. "Do you work in finance?" Paulo asked. "Independent consulting," William replied, "mainly for small and mid-sized companies." "Interesting. What kind of consulting?" "Growth strategies, investment analysis, resource optimization." Paulo nodded, clearly impressed. "Z Group could use someone like you. We're always looking for qualified consultants." "Thank you for the recommendation," William said politely. Elena watched with growing curiosity. William didn't seem like he was pretending. He really knew what he was talking about. "Let's have a little fun with the people who only read the comments. Type pizza in the comments. Only those who made it this far will get it." Now let's keep going with the story. Hours later, while they were chatting with a group near the dance floor, Marcos finally approached. "Elena," he said, using that fake cordial tone she knew so well. "What a surprise seeing you here." "Hi, Marcos. This is William, my boyfriend." Marcos reached out for a handshake, but Elena noticed the tension in his grip. "Marcos," he introduced himself, "Elena's ex-boyfriend." "William," he replied calmly, "current boyfriend." Marcos's smile faltered for a second. "So what do you do, William?" "Business consulting. And you?" "Sales. I'm one of the top performers here." "Congratulations," William said, unfazed. Marcos turned to Elena. "Can I talk to you for a minute? In private?" Elena felt William stiffen beside her. "Anything you have to say to me, you can say in front of my boyfriend." "Elena, please, just a minute." She said no. William stepped in, polite but firm. Marcos stared at him. "Sorry, but I wasn't talking to you, and I wasn't asking for permission." The mood got tense. A few people nearby started paying attention to the conversation. Elena touched William's arm. "It's okay," she said. Marcos, if you have something to say it now or never. Marcos took a deep breath, clearly annoyed. I just wanted to say I hope you're happy. Truly. Thank you. Elena replied flatly. Marcos walked away, but Elena noticed he kept watching them from a distance. Half an hour later, while they were dancing to a slow song, Elena whispered in William's ear. You handled Paulo really well. Thank you. Seriously, where did you learn so much about finance? William spun her gently before answering. Experience. What kind of experience? Elena, let's enjoy the evening. We'll talk about that tomorrow. She was about to press him when she heard a familiar voice behind her. Zhang, that last name sounds familiar. It was Ricardo Mendez, the company's chief operating officer, a man in his 50s with gray hair and a commanding presence. Elena felt William tense up. Excuse me? She said, turning around. William Zhang, right? Ricardo came closer, smiling. Do you have any relatives at Zhang Capital? Elena looked at William, puzzled. He kept a calm expression, but she noticed something different in his eyes. Zhang is a common last name, William replied politely. Ricardo laughed. Maybe, but William Zhang isn't that common, especially with your profile. What profile? Elena asked. Ricardo looked from Elena to William, as if expecting a reaction. Nothing really, he said at last. It just sounded familiar, that's all. But Elena noticed Ricardo kept watching William for the rest of the evening, like he was trying to remember something. When they finally left the hotel, William called a taxi for Elena. Thank you, she said. You were perfect. It was my pleasure. She got into the cab, but before closing the door, she looked at him. William? Yes? Zhang Capital. Do you know that company? He smiled, but didn't answer. Good night, Elena. As the taxi pulled away, Elena looked through the rear window. William was still standing on the sidewalk, watching the car drive off. And for the first time, Elena was absolutely sure. William Zhang was hiding something much bigger than she had imagined. Elena got home still thinking about Ricardo's question regarding Zhang Capital. She changed clothes, made some tea, and sat on the couch with her laptop. She couldn't stop thinking about William's expression when the executive mentioned that name. She opened her browser and typed, Zhang Capital. The results came up instantly. An investment company based in New York, founded 5 years ago. Impressive portfolio, over $2 billion in assets. The website looked sleek and professional, but there were no photos of the executives. Elena scrolled to the About Us section. She read about the company's philosophy, values, mission, all very corporate and generic. But at the bottom of the page she found a small note. Founded by W. Zhang in 2019. William Zhang. It can't be, she whispered, closing the laptop. Coincidence. It had to be a coincidence. William was a freelance escort who charged $500 a night. He couldn't be the owner of a billion-dollar investment firm. Could he? The next morning, Elena arrived at the office earlier than usual. She wanted to avoid the inevitable questions about the night before. But it didn't work. Sandra was the first to show up at her desk. Elena, how was the rest of the evening? Did you two stay late? No, we left shortly after you saw us. He's a sweetheart, so polite, so classy, and handsome. Where did you find a gem like that? Luck, Elena answered, trying to sound casual. And Marcos, I noticed he seemed a bit off after meeting William. Elena shrugged. That's his problem. Sandra was about to keep digging when Paulo showed up. Elena, can I talk to you for a minute? They stepped aside to a quieter corner. Listen, your boyfriend last night. Paulo looked thoughtful. He showed a very specific knowledge about investments, not something a regular consultant would know. What do you mean? He talked about hedge funds, derivatives, acquisition strategies, very technical stuff. And the way he talked so naturally, Elena felt a chill in her stomach. Maybe he studied a lot. Maybe. But I've been working in this field for 15 years, and I know when someone's not just quoting theory. He has hands-on experience. A lot of it. Paulo paused. Do you know where he worked before? He said he's always been an independent consultant. Strange. Yesterday he mentioned some recent changes in market regulations, things only someone really plugged in would know. And when I brought up the restructuring of our holding company, he asked a question about details that not even everyone at the company is aware of. Elena tried to stay calm. What kind of question? About the change in ownership. Very few people know that Z Group went through a shift in major investors last year. And how would he know that? Exactly what I was wondering. Elena spent the morning trying to focus on work, but the conversation with Paolo kept running through her mind. During lunch, she decided to call William. He picked up on the second ring. Elena, how are you? I'm fine. Can I ask you something? Of course. Yesterday you showed a lot of knowledge about finance. Paolo was impressed. Paolo's got a good eye for talent. William, I'm serious. Where does all that knowledge come from? Silence on the other end. William, I'm here. Elena, can we talk about this in person? When? How about tonight? I'll cook for you. Elena hesitated. That wasn't part of the original arrangement, but her curiosity was getting the best of her. Where? My apartment. I'll send you the address. 2 hours later, Elena received a message with an address in Manhattan, a high-end neighborhood. Very high-end. She arrived at the building at 7:30 p.m. and almost turned around. It was one of the most expensive buildings in Manhattan, with a doorman, a marble lobby, and luxurious finishes. Definitely not the kind of place a freelance escort would live. The doorman politely announced her, and she went up to the apartment. William opened the door wearing a white, button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up and black slacks. He looked relaxed, but still elegant. Welcome, he said with a smile. Elena walked in and nearly lost her breath. The apartment was stunning. Floor-to-ceiling windows with a view of Central Park, designer furniture, a gourmet kitchen open to the living room. Everything was tasteful, understated, but clearly expensive. William, she began, I know what you're going to ask. How do you afford all of this? He moved toward the kitchen, where fresh ingredients were spread across the counter. Wine, he offered, dodging the question. Answers. I want answers. William poured 2 glasses of red wine and handed her one. Sit down. Let's talk while I cook. Elena settled onto a tall stool across from him at the kitchen counter. Zang Capital, she said plainly. William paused mid-chop. What do you want to know about Zang Capital? Do you have any connection to it? Why do you think I do? Because yesterday Ricardo asked if you had family there. Because you know things only someone in the industry would know. And because this apartment isn't paid for with $500 a night. William went back to chopping vegetables, more slowly now. Elena, what would you do if you found out I'm not exactly who you think I am? That depends on who you really are. What if I said I'm just someone who values privacy? I'd say you're avoiding the question. He laughed softly. You're persistent, and you're evasive. William seasoned the meat and placed it in the pan. The delicious smell filled the room. All right, my name is William Zhang. I'm 32 years old, and yes, I've worked in finance. Where? A few places. Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley. Elena almost choked on her wine. Goldman Sachs? You worked at Goldman Sachs? For a few years. And now what do? Now I manage my own investments. What kind of investments? William looked her directly in the eyes. Elena, what really matters is that I won't hurt you. I'm not going to expose you. I won't complicate your life. I just want your ex to stop bothering you. That doesn't answer my question. No, but it's the only answer I can give you right now. Elena studied his face. There was honesty there, but also secrets. Why do you do this? Why would someone with your background work as a date for hire? Because sometimes it's nice to meet real people. People who don't know who I am. And who are you? Before William could answer, his phone rang. He glanced at the screen and frowned. Sorry, I have to take this. He stepped into the living room and answered in a low voice. Elena couldn't hear the whole conversation, but she caught a few words. Meeting, Monday, investors, approval. When he came back, he looked concerned. Everything okay? Elena asked. Work. Something always comes up. They had dinner while chatting about lighter topics. William was an excellent cook, and Elena had to admit she was enjoying his company. There was something about him that went beyond looks or mystery. He was smart, funny, and genuinely interested in what she had to say. At 10:30 p.m., as Elena was getting ready to leave, he walked her to the door. Thank you for dinner, she said. Thank you for the company. William? Yes? I don't really know who you are. But I liked getting to know you. The real you. He smiled. Even without knowing who I am. Especially without knowing who you are. Elena left the building with more questions than answers. But one thing was clear. William Zhang was much more than just a hired date, and she was starting to care more than she should. In the taxi ride home, she looked out the window and saw William still standing on the balcony, watching the street. Who was he, really? And why was she starting to fall for a man she didn't truly know? Elena spent all of Sunday thinking about the dinner at William's place. Every detail kept replaying in her mind. The luxurious apartment, the way he moved so easily in the kitchen, how he avoided questions about his past, and especially that strange phone call he answered. On Monday, she arrived at the office determined to find out more about William Zhang. During the coffee break, with the room empty, she did a deeper search on Google. William Zhang, Goldman Sachs. William Zhang, Morgan Stanley. William Zhang, Investments, New York. The results were frustrating. A few vague mentions in financial articles, but nothing solid. It was like he had deliberately erased his digital trail. Until she found something interesting. A 2019 photo in a finance magazine. The caption read, "Young Promises of Wall Street." In the third row, a man who looked a lot like William. Though the image was too blurry to be sure. Elena zoomed in on her phone. It could be him. Or maybe she just wanted it to be. At lunch, Elena decided to visit Roberto, a friend who worked as a financial journalist for a local magazine. If anyone knew the ins and outs of the financial world, it was him. "Elena," Roberto greeted her with a hug. "What a surprise. How are you?" "I'm good." "Roberto, can I ask you something a little odd?" "Of course, I love odd questions." "Have you ever heard of someone named William Zhang?" Roberto frowned, thinking. Zhang? The name sounds familiar. Why? It's complicated. He may have worked at Goldman Sachs or Morgan Stanley. Let me think. Roberto turned to his computer. Zhang isn't a common last name on Wall Street, at least not among top executives. He typed for a while and stayed quiet for a few minutes. "Wait a minute," he said suddenly. "Zhang Capital. Are you talking about Zhang Capital?" Elena felt her heart race. "You know it?" "I know the company. It's one of the fastest-growing investment firms in recent years. Very private, very discreet. The owner's a really young guy, but no one knows much about him. He doesn't give interviews, never shows up at public events. And his name? I'm not totally sure. I think it's W. Zhang, or maybe Li Zhang. Something like that." Roberto kept typing. "Man, this company is impressive. They've bought shares in a bunch of big firms over the last couple of years. In fact," he paused and looked at Elena, "including Z Group." Elena nearly dropped her coffee. "What do you mean?" "Zhang Capital is one of your company's investors. They bought a significant share of the company last year." Elena went quiet, trying to process the information. "Elena, why are you asking about this?" "It's a long story." "Does it have to do with work?" "Not exactly." Roberto gave her a curious look. "You met someone, didn't you?" Elena sighed. "Maybe. And this someone might be connected to Zhang Capital?" "I'm not sure. That's what I'm trying to figure out." Roberto leaned forward. "Elena, if you're getting involved with someone connected to that firm, be careful. They move a lot of money, and where there's big money, there's big power, and where there's big power, there's big danger?" "Not always, but there are always secrets." Elena left her meeting with Roberto more confused and concerned than ever. If Zhang Capital really owned part of Z Group, that could explain how William knew so much about the company. But it also raised much bigger questions. Why hadn't he told her? Why was he pretending to be just a hired date? And most of all, what did he really want? That afternoon, Elena could barely focus on her work. Every time the phone rang, she hoped it was William. But he didn't call. At 6 p.m., as she was leaving the office, her phone finally buzzed. Message from William. "Can I see you tonight? I need to talk to you." Elena hesitated before replying. "Where?" "Same cafe as always. 8 p.m. "I'll be there." Elena arrived at the cafe 5 minutes late on purpose. She wanted to see if William would show any signs of impatience or irritation, but when she saw him, he was calmly reading a newspaper, a nearly empty cup of coffee in front of him. "Sorry I'm late," she said as she sat down. "No problem. I always get here early." They sat in silence for a few seconds, studying each other. "You said you needed to talk to me," Elena broke the silence. "Yes, about last night." "What about last night? You asked questions. I didn't answer. And now you're suspicious." Elena gave a humorless laugh. "Suspicious is putting it lightly." "What did you find out?" The question caught her off guard. "How do you know I found something?" "Because you're smart and determined, and you're not the kind of person who leaves questions unanswered. Elena decided to be direct. Jan Capital. William didn't look surprised. He simply nodded. What do you know about it? That it's a very successful investment firm, that the owner keeps a low profile, and that it owns shares in Z Group. And that maybe you're not just William Zhang, freelance consultant. William sighed and folded the newspaper. Elena, there's something you need to understand. I never lied to you. No? Then what are you? A consultant who lives in a $2 million apartment? I'm an investor, and yes, I'm connected to Zhang Capital. What kind of connection? William paused for a long moment. I'm the founder. Elena felt like she'd been punched in the stomach. You're what? I founded Zhang Capital in 2019. I'm the president and main shareholder. And you didn't think it was important to mention that when I hired you to pretend to be my boyfriend? Elena, you own a billion-dollar company and you agree to work as a date for $500? It's not exactly like that. Then how is it? William took a deep breath. I don't do it for the money. I do it because sometimes it's exhausting always being the CEO, the investor, the businessman. Sometimes I just want to be a regular person. Elena looked at him stunned. You're telling me you pretend to be an escort for fun? For authenticity, to meet people who don't know who I am, to have real conversations. And what am I, a social experiment? No. William's voice was louder than usual. You're different. Different how? You're real. You're brave. You don't try to impress me because you didn't know who I was. Or rather, you didn't. Elena stood up, furious. I can't believe you did this to me. Elena, wait. No. You made a fool out of me. I paid $500 for a billionaire to pretend to be my boyfriend. That's humiliating. You don't understand. Oh, I understand perfectly. You were having fun at my expense. Elena grabbed her purse, but William gently held her wrist. Elena, please, let me explain. You had plenty of chances to explain. At the cafe, in your apartment, during dinner, you chose not to. I didn't lie. I just didn't say everything. That's the same thing. Elena pulled away and started to walk out, but William followed her. Elena, what happened between us was real. At least for me, it was. She stopped and turned to face him. What happened between us? Nothing happened between us. You were hired to do a job. That's it. You know that's not true. I know you're a liar. Elena? No. This is over. Thank you for your services, Mr. Zhang. Consider yourself dismissed. Elena walked out of the cafe without looking back. But when she got into the first cab, she couldn't help but glance through the rear window. William was still standing on the sidewalk, hands in his pockets, watching the cab drive away. All the way home, Elena felt a mix of anger, embarrassment, and something she didn't want to admit. Disappointment. Why was she so hurt? After all, she had hired William for a specific job, and he had done it perfectly. The problem was that somewhere along those few days, she had started to feel something real for him. And now she had found out it was all a lie. Or was it? Elena remembered the way William looked at her, how he seemed genuinely interested in what she said, how he acted during the dinner at her place. There was something there that felt too real to be fake. But how could she trust someone who had kept something so important from her? When she got home, Elena collapsed onto the couch and turned on the TV, trying to distract herself. But her mind kept drifting back to William. At 10:30 p.m., her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Elena, I know you're angry, and you have every right to be, but I need you to know that nothing I felt was fake. If you want to talk, I'll be at the apartment. If not, I'll respect your decision. But I can't let you believe you were just a job to me. You never were. William. Elena read the message 3 times before deleting it. She wasn't going to answer. She wasn't going to fall for this. But as she got ready for bed, one question kept echoing in her mind. What if he was telling the truth? What if what they felt really was real? Elena fell asleep without an answer, but deep down, she knew this story was far from over. Elena woke up on Tuesday with a strange feeling in her stomach. It wasn't just the unease about what she'd learned about William. It was something else. A restlessness she couldn't quite explain. She got to the office at her usual time, but something felt off. People whispering and going quiet when she walked by. Curious glances. Sandra from HR, avoiding eye contact. At 10:30 a.m., Elena got an email that made her blood run cold. From Ricardo Mendez, Chief Operating Officer, to Elena Rivera. Subject, urgent meeting. Elena, please come to my office at 11:30 a.m. for an important conversation. Sincerely, Ricardo Mendez. Elena read the email 3 times. The tone was cold, formal, very different from the relaxed way Ricardo usually talked to her. At 11:25, Elena knocked on Ricardo's door. He was sitting behind his desk with a serious look she had never seen before. Sandra was there too, holding a folder. "Have a seat, Elena," Ricardo said, without smiling. She sat down, trying to stay calm. "Is something wrong?" Ricardo leaned forward. "Elena, some concerning information has come to my attention about your personal life." "What do you mean?" Sandra opened the folder and placed some papers on the desk. "About your boyfriend, William Zhang." Elena felt her heart speed up. "What about William?" "We've received information that he might not be who he claims to be," Ricardo said, "and that could affect your position here at the company." "I don't understand." Sandra leaned in. "Elena, someone at the company quietly looked into William after the company party. What we found is troubling." "What did you find?" Ricardo picked up one of the papers. "Apparently, your boyfriend is involved in some suspicious financial activities. Shell companies, undeclared transactions." Elena stood up, outraged. "This is ridiculous. Who did this investigation?" "That's not important," Ricardo said. "What matters is that Z Group can't afford to have employees associated with people of questionable reputation." "Questionable reputation? Are you accusing William of something?" Sandra sighed. "Elena, we like you. You're an excellent employee. That's why we're having this conversation privately, before this turns into something bigger." "What kind of problem are we talking about?" "The kind that could lead to termination for cause," Ricardo said flatly. Elena felt like she'd been slapped. "You're threatening me? We're giving you a chance to resolve this quietly." "How?" "End the relationship," Sandra said, publicly. "Make it clear you have no further connection with him, and everything goes back to normal." Elena stared at them, stunned. "You want me to break up with someone just to keep my job?" "Elena, be reasonable," Ricardo said. "It's just a boyfriend. You can find another. And if I refuse, then we'll have to take more serious steps to protect the company's reputation." Elena was about to respond when someone knocked on the door. "Come in," Ricardo said, annoyed. The door opened and Marcos walked in, smiling. "Sorry to interrupt, but..." Elena turned to him, furious. "It was you, wasn't it? You're the one who did this ridiculous investigation." Marcos shrugged. "I was just worried about you. That guy is dangerous, Elena." "Get out," she shouted. "Elena, calm down," Sandra said. "No, this is insane. You can't force me to end a relationship." Ricardo stood up. "Elena, you have until the end of the day to decide. Either you distance yourself from this man, or we'll have to distance ourselves from you." "This is blackmail." "This is corporate protection, SMA," Ricardo corrected. Elena grabbed her bag, shaking with anger. "You're going to regret this." She stormed out of the office, slamming the door behind her, leaving Ricardo, Sandra, and Marcos in silence. Elena went back to her desk in a state of shock. She couldn't believe what had just happened. Marcos had planned the whole thing to get back at her, and the company was going along with it. She was about to pick up the phone to call William when she heard a commotion coming from the lobby. Loud voices, fast footsteps. Someone speaking on the phone in an authoritative tone. Elena stood up and went to the window overlooking the main lobby. What she saw left her speechless. William was there. But it wasn't the quiet, reserved William she knew. He stood tall, wearing a flawless suit, talking on the phone while 3 other men in suits walked beside him. He looked like a high-ranking executive arriving for an important meeting. What was he doing there? Elena rushed down the stairs and arrived just in time to hear William say to the receptionist, "I'd like to speak with Ricardo Mendez." Immediately. "Sir, do you have an appointment?" "My name is William Zhang, CEO of Zhang Capital. I don't need an appointment." The receptionist went pale and quickly picked up the phone. Elena walked closer, still in shock. "William, what are you doing here?" He turned and saw her. For a moment, the powerful executive mask slipped, and she saw the man who had had dinner with her 2 nights ago. "Elena, we need to talk." "How did you find out?" "I have my ways," he said quietly, "and I'm not going to let them do this to you." Before Elena could respond, Ricardo appeared in the lobby, followed by Sandra and two other directors she didn't know well. They all looked nervous. "Mr. Zhang," Ricardo said, forcing a smile. "What a surprise. We weren't expecting." "This isn't a social visit," William interrupted coldly. "I'm here to talk to you about Elena Rivera." Ricardo exchanged glances with Sandra. "Maybe we should speak in private." "No," said William. "Elena stays. She deserves to hear this." They headed to a meeting room on the ground floor. Elena sat next to William, still trying to take in everything that was happening. Ricardo closed the door and sat across from them. "Mr. Zhang, you threatened to fire Elena because of her relationship with me," William said, cutting straight to the point. "We received some concerning information." "What information?" William's voice was ice cold. Sandra opened the folder again. "Shell companies, suspicious activity." William laughed, but it wasn't a happy laugh. "Suspicious activity? Are you referring to the $2 billion my company moves every year in a fully legal and audited manner?" Silence filled the room. "Or are you talking about the shell companies that are, in fact, fully registered subsidiaries in different states for tax optimization?" Ricardo began to sweat. "Mr. Zhang, we didn't have that information." "No? Then maybe you should have asked before threatening one of your best employees." William stood up and walked to the window. "Did you know Zhang Capital is one of Z Group's major investors?" Elena saw Ricardo go pale. "Did you know we bought 15% of this company's shares last year?" Sandra dropped the pen she was holding. "Did you know that, technically, I'm one of your bosses?" The silence in the room was deafening. William turned and looked directly at Ricardo. "And did you know I'm seriously considering selling all our Z Group shares after what you did to Elena?" "Mr. Zhang, please." Ricardo stood, clearly desperate. "This is all a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding?" William stepped closer to the table. "You threatened to fire an employee because of her relationship with me, based on false information from a bitter ex-boyfriend. How did you? How do I know?" "Because I investigate before I act, unlike you." William placed his hands on the table and leaned forward. "Now listen closely. Elena Rivera is one of the best employees in this company. Any retaliation against her because of me will bring legal and financial consequences you don't want to deal with." "Yes, sir," Ricardo muttered. "Also, I want a formal apology, in writing, and I want Marcos Silva fired for abuse of power and moral harassment." "Mr. Zhang, this isn't a suggestion. It's a demand." William straightened up and adjusted his suit. "You have until the end of the day to fix this. If not, my company will withdraw all investments from Z Group, and I guarantee the rest of the industry will know exactly why." He headed to the door but stopped and looked at Elena. "Elena, are you coming with me?" She stood up, still in shock, and followed him out of the room. In the elevator, going up so she could collect her things, Elena finally found her voice. "William, You don't have to say anything," he interrupted gently. "I do. You just did that for me. Why?" He looked her straight in the eyes. "Because no one has the right to treat you like that. And because I care about you, truly." Elena felt tears welling in her eyes. "But I was awful to you yesterday. You had every right to be angry. I should have told you the truth from the beginning. Why didn't you? Because I wanted you to like me for who I am, not for what I have." The elevator stopped at her floor. Elena hesitated before stepping out. "William? Yes, thank you." He smiled for the first time since he'd arrived. "Always." As the elevator doors closed, Elena knew her life had changed forever. And for the first time in days, she wasn't afraid of that change. Elena spent the next 3 days on an emotional roller coaster. The story had leaked to the financial press. Billionaire CEO confronts company for employee, and her phone wouldn't stop ringing. Journalists, curious people, even headhunters offering jobs. Marcos had been fired that same afternoon, escorted out of the building by security. Ricardo sent a formal apology by email, along with a promotion and a raise Elena hadn't even asked for. But from William, no news. On Thursday morning, Elena finally gave in to curiosity and Googled William Zhang. This time, she found dozens of articles. Photos of him at corporate events, interviews about investment strategies, mentions and lists of successful young entrepreneurs. It felt surreal to see the man who had eaten pasta with her described as one of the most influential investors in New York. On Friday afternoon, when Elena got home after a particularly strange day at the office. Everyone treated her with exaggerated respect. She found an envelope under her door. Inside was a simple card, written in elegant handwriting. Elena, I know the past few days have been intense. If you'd like to talk, I'll be on the rooftop of my building at 8 p.m. tonight. If you don't show up, I'll understand. Elena looked at the clock. 6:30 p.m. She still had time to decide. Did she really want to see William again? After everything that happened, she still wasn't sure how she felt about him. Grateful, for sure, but also confused, and something she didn't want to admit. She missed him. At 7:45 p.m., Elena was in William's elevator, going up to the rooftop. The elevator doors opened directly onto a spectacular outdoor area. The rooftop had a 360-degree view of Manhattan, with elegant furniture scattered across the terrace and a small outdoor gourmet kitchen. William stood with his back to her, leaning on the railing, watching the sunset. He was wearing jeans and a simple white shirt. It was the first time Elena had seen him dressed so casually. "You came," he said, without turning around. "I almost didn't." "Why did you?" Elena stepped closer and stood beside him, looking out at the city. "Because I need to thank you, and I need some answers." "No need to thank me. What answers? Why did you do that? Why did you put yourself out there like that?" William finally looked at her. "Because they had no right to treat you like that. But you risked your privacy, your company." "Elena, do you really think I care more about privacy than about you?" The question caught her off guard. "I don't know." "Then let me be clear, I don't." They stood in silence for a few minutes, watching the city lights begin to glow. "William, why did you really do that work? The escort job?" He sighed. "You want the honest answer? Always. Because I was tired of being seen as a bank account. Every woman I met already knew who I was before we even spoke. They already had an opinion, already had expectations. And with me it was different. With you, you were just you, strong, determined, direct. You didn't try to impress me. You didn't treat me like I was special." Elena chuckled softly. "I treated you like an employee, exactly, and it felt freeing. But now I know who you are. Does that change anything?" Elena thought about the question for a long moment. "I don't know. Does it?" "Not for me. You're still the woman who paid $500 to make her ex jealous. And who pulled it off?" "I really did, didn't I?" "You did. Marcos is probably still losing sleep over it." They laughed together, and for the first time in days, Elena felt relaxed. "Elena, can I show you something?" "Sure." William led her to the outdoor kitchen, where fresh ingredients were laid out on the counter. "I thought about cooking for you, if you wanted to have dinner with me." "You were expecting me to come?" "I was hoping you'd at least consider it." Elena looked at the ingredients: fresh salmon, assorted vegetables, and a bottle of white wine chilling in an ice bucket. "White wine," she commented. "I remembered you said you preferred it over red." "I never said that." William paused, confused. "No?" "No, but it is my preference. How did you know?" I don't know, just a feeling?" Elena studied him. There was something more, something he wasn't saying. But she decided not to press. For today, she was tired of mysteries. "Can I help with the cooking?" "Of course." Over the next hour, they cooked together like a longtime couple. William seasoned the salmon while Elena prepared the vegetables. They talked about everyday things: movies, books, places they'd like to visit. It was surprisingly normal. Despite the luxurious apartment, the stunning view, and the fact that one of them was a billionaire, it just felt like two people enjoying each other's company. As they sat down to dinner, with the Manhattan skyline lit up behind them, Elena realized something important. "William? Boone? I don't care." "About what?" "The money, the company, all of that. I like you. The William who cooks with me, who cares about me, who makes me laugh." William stopped eating. "Elena, no, let me talk. These past few days, I've been thinking about how I felt when I met you. At the company party in your apartment, that dinner, it wasn't fake. At least not on my part. Not on mine either. So what do we do now?" "Now," William smiled, "now we finish dinner, watch a movie on the couch, and see where the night takes us." "That simple?" "It can be, if we let it." 2 hours later, they were lying on the living room couch watching a classic movie, Casablanca, with Elena resting her head on William's chest. It felt comfortable, natural, like it had always been that way. "William?" You said you did that as a hobby. How many times have you done it? You're the third. And the other two? One was for a dull corporate event. The woman needed a companion so she wouldn't seem vulnerable at a meeting full of arrogant investors. And the other? An 80-year-old lady wanted a dance partner for her wedding anniversary. Her husband had passed away the year before. Elena turned to look at him. Really? Really? I danced waltz with her for 3 hours. That's sweet. Don't tell anyone. It'll ruin my ruthless businessman image. Elena laughed and settled back against his chest. Your secret's safe with me. When the movie ended, it was past midnight. Elena was almost asleep. I should go home, she murmured. You can stay. I've got more than enough rooms. William? Yes? Thank you for everything. Elena? Thank you for seeing me as a regular person. Elena fell asleep right there in William's arms on the couch. When she woke up the next morning, she found a note on the coffee table. Good morning, sleeping beauty. Had to leave early for a meeting, but there's fresh coffee in the kitchen and croissants from that place you like. Now I want you to pay me back with your time, not $500. P.S. The view's even prettier in the morning. Elena smiled, tucked the note into her purse, and walked over to the window. William was right. The view was even more beautiful in the morning. And for the first time in a long while, Elena felt truly happy. 3 weeks had passed since that night in the penthouse. Elena and William had settled into a quiet, steady routine. Dinners at his place, walks in Central Park on weekends, long conversations about everything and nothing. Elena was getting used to the small luxuries that came with William's life. The private driver, the exclusive restaurants, the way he could solve any problem with a single phone call. But she also discovered his simpler side, how much he enjoyed cooking, how he laughed at silly movies, how genuinely interested he was when she talked about her work. It was almost perfect. Almost. On Monday morning, Elena arrived at the office to find Sandra waiting at her desk with a strange look on her face. Elena, can I talk to you for a moment? Sure. Is something wrong? Sandra glanced around, checking if anyone could hear. How long have you been seeing William Zhang? Why? Because the media is all over it. Elena felt her stomach drop. What do you mean? Sandra pulled out her phone and showed her a business gossip website. The headline made Elena want to disappear. Billionaire William Zhang dating employee from invested company. There were photos of them leaving a restaurant, walking in the park, entering his building. Clearly taken from a distance, without them noticing. Elena, are you okay? Sandra asked, concerned. How did this end up online? I don't know, but it's all over the financial news websites. People are speculating whether it's a conflict of interest or if the company's going to be investigated. Elena sat down in her chair, feeling nauseous. Elena, Ricardo wants to talk to you, right now. This time, the meeting in Ricardo's office felt different. He didn't seem hostile, just concerned. Elena, please sit down. We can work this out. Work out what? The situation with the press. They're making it look like there's something inappropriate about your relationship with William Zhang. There's nothing inappropriate. I know, but sometimes perception matters more than reality. Ricardo leaned forward. Elena, I need to ask, did you two talk about company business? Did he get any inside information from you? Never, Elena said, clearly offended. We didn't even talk about work. I believe you, but the investors are nervous. Some of them are questioning whether keeping you here is a risk. Elena stood up, then fire me. Elena, please. We don't want to fire you. You're a great employee, but maybe it would be best if you took some time off, just until things calm down. What do you mean? Paid leave. A month, maybe 2. However long it takes for the media to move on to something else. And if I refuse? Ricardo sighed. Elena, this is the best option for everyone, including you. Elena left the meeting furious and humiliated. Once again, her relationship with William was affecting her career, and this time she wasn't sure he could fix it. She called William the moment she left the building. William, we need to talk. Now. What happened? We're in the news, and it's not good. An hour later, they met at a quiet cafe in Brooklyn, far from the possible paparazzi in Manhattan. William had already seen the articles. His expression was serious. Elena, I'm sorry. I didn't think this would happen. How could you not think that? You're a famous billionaire. Of course, they'd look into your personal life. I thought we could stay under the radar a little longer. Well, we didn't, and now I'm basically being forced out. William tensed. They fired you? Forced vacation, until things calm down. That's unacceptable. William, no. You can't handle this like you did last time. Why not? Because this time they're right. Her voice came out louder than she intended. A few people in the cafe turned to look. William lowered his voice. Elena, they're not right. You didn't do anything wrong. Didn't I? I'm dating the man who owns 15% of the company I work for. How is that not a problem? Because our relationship has nothing to do with business. But people don't know that, and perception is everything. Elena took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. William, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. I always am. Did you start getting interested in me before or after you found out where I worked? William hesitated for just a second, but Elena noticed. Elena, answer the question. It's complicated. It's not. It's simple. When did you find out I worked at Z Group? William sighed. During our first conversation, madam, when you mentioned the company's name. And you didn't think it was important to mention that you were an investor? I didn't think it was relevant to what we were doing. Not relevant? Elena leaned forward. William, you knew from day one that we had a professional connection, and you didn't tell me. Elena, that doesn't change anything between us. It changes everything. She stood up. Every time you asked something specific about the company, you were checking up on me. It wasn't an investigation. It was what? It was curiosity. I wanted to understand your work environment. Why? For what? William didn't say anything. William, why were you really interested in me? Was it because I worked for a company you had invested in? Was I just an easy way to get internal information? Elena, how can you think that? Because you lied. Again, you had a chance to tell me about the connection and you chose not to. Elena grabbed her bag. I can't do this anymore. Elena, wait. No, I left a toxic relationship with Marcos only to end up in another one full of lies. This isn't based on lies. It's not? Then tell me, what else are you hiding from me? William opened his mouth to answer, but no words came out. That's what I thought, Elena said. There's always something else with you. Elena walked out of the cafe without looking back. This time, William didn't follow. In the cab on her way home, she looked at her phone and saw dozens of unread messages. Journalists, acquaintances, even job offers from other companies. Her life had turned into a circus, and all because of a man who couldn't be completely honest with her. When she got home, Elena threw herself on the couch and cried. Not just out of anger, but disappointment. Because despite everything, she had fallen in love with William. Truly. And that made it all the more painful. At 10 p.m., her phone buzzed with a message from William. Elena, I know you're angry, and you have every right to be, but I need you to know that never, not even for a second, were you just a way for me to get information. From day one, you were the most real person I've ever met, and I fell in love with that. If you give me a chance, I'll explain everything, completely, no holding back. But if you decide you don't want to see me again, I'll respect that. Just don't leave thinking you didn't mean anything to me. You mean everything. Elena read the message 5 times before deleting it. Some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt. Elena spent 2 weeks at home, officially on vacation, but really hiding from the press, which was still speculating about her relationship with William. She turned down all his calls, ignored his messages, and even ended up blocking his number. On the 3rd Monday, she decided she needed to leave New York. She booked the first flight to Seattle, where her college friend, Marina, had been living for 5 years. You look like a ghost, were Marina's first words when she saw her at the airport. Thanks for the support, Elena replied sarcastically. Sorry, but it's true. What did that man do to you? During the ride to Marina's apartment, Elena told her the whole story. From the first coffee shop meeting to the final fight. Marina listened quietly, only asking a few questions here and there. Elena, can I give you my opinion? Sure. You're being unfair. Elena turned to her, surprised. What do you mean? The man fell in love with you without knowing who you were. Then he found out you had a professional connection and didn't know how to tell you. That doesn't make him a villain. He lied, Marina. He kept something from you. That's different from lying. No, it's not. Yes, it is. Lying would be making up a fake story. Keeping something back is not telling the whole truth. And sometimes people do that out of fear, not out of malice. Elena went quiet, staring out the window. Marina, what if he was only interested in me because I work at a company he invested in? And what if he wasn't? What if it was just a coincidence? How would I know? By asking him. I already asked. You asked while you were angry, accusing him. That's not the same as asking calmly, trying to understand. Elena stayed in Seattle for a week, helping Marina with some freelance projects and trying not to think about William. It wasn't working very well. On Thursday, Marina came home with a strange look on her face. Elena, you need to see this. What is it? Marina turned on the TV to a financial news channel. The anchor was talking about John Capital. The company announced today it's pulling out of all investments in media and marketing holdings, including Z Group, where it held a 15% stake. CEO William Zhang didn't give many details, only saying the company is shifting its strategic focus. Elena's heart started racing. He sold his shares in Z Group? Looks like it, Marina said. Why would he do that? Elena knew exactly why. To remove any conflict of interest between them, so she could return to work without trouble. To prove it had never been about business. Elena, you're crying. I am? Elena touched her face and realized she was in fact crying. Marina, I need to go back to New York. Why? Because I've been a fool. William wasn't expecting anyone that Friday night. He had spent the whole week working late, trying to distract himself from Elena's absence. When the doorbell rang at 9:30 p.m., he figured it was some delivery he'd forgotten about. It wasn't. Elena was standing at the door with a small suitcase and tired red eyes. Hi, she said simply. Elena? William looked genuinely surprised. Come in. She stepped into the apartment she knew so well, but that now felt different. Emptier somehow. You sold your shares in Z Group, she said straight to the point. I did. Why? Because you were right. It was a conflict of interest. William, you lost money doing that. Not much, and I don't care. Elena sat down on the couch exhausted. Why did you do it? So you could go back to work without any issues, so no one would question your integrity again. You didn't have to. Yes, I did. Elena, you matter more than any investment. They sat in silence for a few minutes. Elena looked around the apartment, noticing small changes. There was less life in it now, less warmth. William, can I ask you something? And this time, I need you to be completely honest. Always. When you saw my profile on that escort website, did you already know who I was? William hesitated. No, I didn't know anything about you beyond what was written there. And when I mentioned where I worked, I was surprised. But that's not why I stayed interested. Then, why did you stay? William got up and walked to the desk in the corner of the room. He opened a drawer and pulled out a folder. Because you were different from every other woman I've ever met. He came back and handed the folder to Elena. Open it. Elena opened the folder and found several printed pages. Emails. Dozens of them. All addressed to her, all dated within the past 2 months, but none had been sent. She started reading the first one. Elena, it's been a week since our first conversation. I can't stop thinking about your determination, the way you handled a difficult situation with courage. You don't know this, but you inspired me. She moved on to the second. Elena, today you told me about your work, about your dreams. For the first time in years, I talked to someone about things that really matter, not numbers or deals. And the third, Elena, I'm falling in love with you, truly. And it scares me because it's been so long since I felt anything real. Elena looked at William surprised. You wrote all of this? I did, but I never had the courage to send them. Why not? Because I knew that one day I'd have to tell you the truth about who I really am. And I was afraid that would change everything. Elena kept reading. There were emails about the dinners they'd shared, the conversations they'd had, how he felt whenever he was around her. It read like a diary of his emotions the whole time they had been together. The last email was from 3 days ago. Elena, it's been 2 weeks since you walked out of that cafe. 2 weeks without hearing your voice, seeing your smile, or knowing how your day went. I sold my shares in Z Group today. Not to win you back, but because you were right. There was a conflict there, and because you mean more to me than any deal I'll ever make. Let's play a game for those who only read the comments. Type Coca-Cola in the comments. Only the ones who made it this far will get it. Now, let's continue the story. I don't know if you'll ever forgive me. I don't know if I'll ever get the chance to explain that not once, not even for a second, were you just a means to an end. You were the end. You're the person who reminded me what it means to be human. If you're reading this someday, know that I love you. I love your strength, your intelligence, your honesty. I love the way you challenge me, the way you're unimpressed by superficial things, the way you see right through the masks I wear. You asked me to be completely honest, so here it is. I fell in love with you on the very first day. Not with the Z Group employee, not with the woman needing help with an ex. I fell in love with you, the Elena who paid $500 to prove a point, who faced an awkward situation with dignity, who treated me like an equal when I was used to being seen as a bank account. And now I don't know how to live without you. Elena felt tears running down her face. William. Elena, I know I made mistakes. I know I should have told you about Z Group from the start, but I swear with everything I have it was never about business. It was always about you. Elena closed the folder and looked at him. Why didn't you show me this before? Because I was afraid I'd come off as desperate or manipulative. And now I'd rather look desperate than let you walk away thinking you were deceived. Elena stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the lit-up city. William stayed where he was, giving her space to think. William, yes? Would you still hire me for $500? He smiled for the first time in weeks. No? No? Today I'd hire you to be my partner. And my love. Elena turned to face him. Partner? I'm starting a new company, focused on ethical and sustainable investments. I need someone smart, brave, and not afraid to call me out when I'm wrong. And the love part? That I offer freely. No contracts, no expiration date. Only if you want it. Elena crossed the room and stopped in front of him. William Jang, you're the most complicated man I've ever met. Is that a yes? It's a yes to the partnership, and it's a yes to love. William kissed her then, and Elena felt like she had finally come home. Outside New York continued its frantic dance of lights and movement, but inside that apartment, everything was exactly where it was meant to be. Elena adjusted her black blazer for the 5th time in 10 minutes. She was nervous, which was unusual for her, but today wasn't a normal day. Today was the official launch of Rivera Jang Sustainable Investments, the company she and William had built together over the last 12 months. You look beautiful, William said, appearing behind her in the mirror of the penthouse bathroom. I'm nervous. Why? You've done this dozens of times. Never as a CEO. William smiled and kissed her forehead. Co-founder and CEO, don't forget the most important part. Elena turned to face him. William wore the navy blue suit. She had picked a gray tie and that smile that still gave her butterflies. Ready to face the press? She asked. Ready to face anything with you by my side. The event was being held in the main ballroom at the Four Seasons, the same hotel where it had all started a year earlier. Elena had insisted on the location, a quiet tribute to the beginning of their story. When they arrived, there were already about 200 people in the room, investors, journalists, environmental NGO reps, and many familiar faces from the business world. Elena, Sandra rushed over as soon as she saw her. You look amazing, and this company, I can't believe it. Thanks, Sandra. How are things at Z Group? Good, really good, but nothing like this. You guys are changing the game. It was true. In less than a year, Rivera Jang had become one of the leading names in sustainable investing in the U.S. They funded everything from clean energy startups to organic farming co-ops, always with a focus on positive social impact. Elena Rivera? A journalist approached. Can I ask you a few questions? Of course. What's it like working with your boyfriend? Isn't that a conflict of interest? Elena smiled. That question was expected. William and I were business partners before we were a couple. At work, he's my co-founder and I'm the CEO. At home, he's my boyfriend and I'm the woman who still makes him do the dishes. The journalist laughed. And the rumors about a possible engagement? I can't comment on our personal life, Elena replied diplomatically. But I can say our professional partnership has never been stronger. At 8 p.m., it was time for the presentations. William went up first to speak about the company's financial vision. Elena watched from the back of the room, proud to see how much more comfortable he had become with public speaking. Good evening, everyone. Exactly 1 year ago, I met an extraordinary woman who asked me a simple question. Why don't you invest your money in things that actually matter? Elena smiled. She remembered that conversation during one of the first dinners they had shared at the penthouse. That question changed my life, and today I'm here to show you the result. A company that proves you can make a profit by doing good. William presented Rivera-Jean's numbers. $50 million in investments in the first year, 23 funded projects, more than 1,000 jobs created. Now I'd like to welcome to the stage the real visionary behind this company, our CEO, Elena Rivera. The applause was long and warm. Elena stepped onto the stage and stood beside William at the microphone. Thank you. When I was little, my grandmother used to say that money is like water. It can either nourish or destroy depending on how you use it. Rivera-Jean exists to nourish. Elena spoke about the company's projects, a vertical farm in Brooklyn feeding 3,000 families, a recycling startup that had created 200 jobs in low-income communities, a microcredit program for women entrepreneurs. But what makes me proudest isn't the numbers. It's knowing that every investment we make has a face, a story, a family behind it. When she finished her speech, the applause was even louder. Elena was glowing. Elena, William said into the mic, before we wrap up, can I ask you something? She looked at him, puzzled. That wasn't in the script. Sure. Would you hire me for $500? Elena laughed, recognizing the question that had become a private joke between them. No, she replied, following the familiar script. Today I'd hire you to be my partner and my love. Good, William said, pulling a small box from his pocket. Because I have a counteroffer. Elena felt the world stop. The room went completely silent. William knelt on stage in front of 200 people and several cameras. Elena Rivera, you changed my life. You taught me that success isn't just measured in dollars, but in the difference we make, the lives we touch, the worlds we change. You made me a better man. Tears were already rolling down Elena's face. Will you be my partner forever? In business, in life, in everything? William opened the box, revealing a simple, elegant diamond ring. And engraved inside the band, Elena could see the number 500. Yes, she said, barely above a whisper. Yes, I will. The room burst into applause. William stood up, placed the ring on her finger, and kissed her as the photographer snapped away and the guests cheered. 3 hours later, after the event ended and the last guests had left, Elena and William were alone in the empty hall. You planned this, she said, still looking at the ring. I planned every detail, even the place, the 4 seasons, where it all began. It felt right. Elena laughed. Do you remember how desperate I was that day, trying to make my ex jealous? And do you remember how bored I was, hoping to meet someone real? Look where we are now. Look where we are now. They walked over to the window and looked out at the lights of New York City. William? Huh? Thank you. For what? For seeing me. Before you even really knew me, you saw me. Elena? Yes? Thank you for saving me from an empty life. The next morning, while they were having breakfast in the penthouse, Elena noticed a familiar folder on the kitchen table. William, what's this? Open it. Inside was a framed document, the first receipt of their life as a couple. Social escort contract service, attendance at corporate event, amount $500, status paid in love. And below, a handwritten note. First investment of Rivera-Jean, return infinite, term forever. Elena laughed until she cried. You're impossible. And you love me anyway. Unfortunately, yes. 6 months later, Elena Rivera and William Jang were married in a small ceremony at Central Park, right on the bench where they had their first real conversation, away from contracts and pretending. Rivera-Jang Sustainable Investments became one of the most respected investment firms in the country. Elena made the cover of Forbes as Young CEO of the Year. William learned to share the spotlight and discovered he preferred being behind the scenes, supporting the woman he loved. Marcos tried to reconnect 2 years later at a college graduation party. Elena was polite but firm. Thank you, but no. I'm very happy with my husband. William didn't even need to say a word. And every time they told their story, whether to friends, to journalists, or to the children they'd have one day, Elena always ended it the same way. Sometimes, the best investments are the ones you don't even know you're making. I paid $500 for one night. and I got a lifetime. What did you think of Elena and William's story? Share your thoughts in the comments. On a scale from 0 to 10, what score would you give this story? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell to follow all of our stories. And take a moment to check out more touching stories by clicking here on the final screen.